This event is being broadcast live on WestfordCAT. It is also going to be available on YouTube. In addition, recordings of this event will also be made available on the WestfordCAT, YouTube, and on the League's website. We would like to thank the WestfordCAT for their participation in making this evening happen. A few words about the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters of Westford is a nonpartisan grassroots organization of people of all genders, ages, and backgrounds. The League's goals are to encourage active and informed participation in government, increased understandings of major public policy issues, and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. To learn more or to become a member, please visit our website, lwv.westford.org. We would like to thank to all those who submitted questions online prior to this evening. There will not be, unfortunately, enough time tonight to ask all the questions that have been submitted. I think we broke a record because we received 85 questions in advance. And expect more as, of course, the evening runs along. We only, unfortunately, though, have time for about 25 questions. In choosing which questions to ask out of all those 85, we strive to cover a variety of topics that we feel will be of interest to the voters. It is our goal to make sure that the questions that are asked are not biased or leading in any way. Printed information from the candidates can be found in our voters guide, which was published this past Monday. Candidates' information, contact information, is also available on this guide should they choose to provide it. If your question is not addressed tonight in a way you would like, or you want some more information, more clarity, please feel free to check out the voters guide and reach out to the candidates themselves to ask more questions. Additionally, further information about the candidates can also be found in the WestfordCAT's candidate minutes, which is on the WestfordCAT website. Now, with a short note about the voters guide. This year we inadvertently left open the potential for the draft guide to be viewed while it was still in production. One candidate did find it via Google search. Gotta love Google, right? And alerted us. We quickly protected the draft document, and now that it's fully edited, we published it, like I said, published it this past Monday. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight, Joanne Berry of the Acton Area League. We've had the pleasure of Joanne's moderation before and are happy to welcome her back to Westford.
Okay. Our first panel of candidates will be those for planning board. And we have one person actually in the room and one person on Zoom. And I was reminded as I was driving over here tonight that it was probably 10 years ago I came and there was a candidate who was remote, and we put her on TV and it was like, wow, that's like the coolest thing ever. And now we're like, yeah, right. Yeah. But it was the first time we had done such a thing that I was involved in, for sure. And I think some people went through a lot of technical contortions to make it work, but it did work. And I'm sure it will work fine right now. So so Mr. Schaffer is on Zoom. He's on a business trip, so couldn't be here tonight. And Mr. Zhang is here in the room. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening. We'll have a few questions with 1-minute response time and a 1-minute closing. And our timer is right here, and the candidates will be able to see when their time is coming close to the end. So we will start with, are we supposed to be able to see him better? Probably needs to turn on his camera. Mr. Schaffer, you might need to turn on your camera. We only see a black square. Can he hear me? That's a good question.
I can see you.
Well, we cannot see you. But we can hear you just fine. So why don't we start off Do we have an idea why this might be the way it is?
Not sure.
Okay.
Why don't we start with our other candidate?
Right, yes. So while we're trying to figure that out, why don't we start with our opening statement? Mr. Zhang, go ahead.
Thanks to the League and Joanne for hosting tonight's event. Thanks everyone for participation. I recently joined the League membership knowing that they welcome not only female voters, but male voters as well. I've lived in Westford for over 15 years with my family and 3 kids, and 2 of them are juniors at WA. So 15 years ago, we decided to move to Westford for 2 primary reasons: the academic excellence with the award-winning public school system and circle of friends that we cherished. Over time, we never regretted. And this is one of the best choices we ever had, living in Westford. Every day, I see the volunteers, those residents, those beautiful minds working tirelessly, putting in their heart and soul for a better Westford. And this is a beautiful story. It's a Westford story. It's also an American story. And I'd like to be part of that story. Professionally, I have worked across multiple professions and career across the technology and property management. So I can bring the digitization talent and experience to the planning board, knowing that digitization today is being built into the master plan. The other 2 are engagement, community engagement, and infrastructure readiness. So with that, thank you everyone, and I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Schaffer. Can you hear us?
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Bob Schaffer, candidate for re-election to the Planning Board. First, I want to thank the Westford League of Women Voters and our guest moderator for hosting tonight. I've been involved in community service here in Westford since 1997. I think the underlying theme that drives my service has been how I could make positive contributions with positive benefits to Westford residents. During these last 28 years, my wife and I have raised 2 children, both of whom went through the Westford Public Schools. Professionally, I am a systems engineer, and I bring that skill, I think, to bear every meeting with the Planning Board. Currently up on having served 2 full terms on the Planning Board, 2000 to 2005, and 2020 until the present. In 1997, I joined WestNet as a volunteer, and then I continued on working with the Westford Master Plan Implementation Committee, Stupinski Land Acquisition Committee, FinCom, Historical Commission, and Drew Gardens Task Force. At the present time, we have some very important issues facing us in planning here in Westford. We have the MBTA Community Housing Overlay District projects now coming in. We have a new Commonwealth law for accessory dwelling units, and our current bylaw is not in agreement with that. We also have a Route 40 corridor study that's going to kick off here on 1 July, and in the next few weeks or so, the Planning Board and the Select Board will look for volunteers. We have a pedestrian improvement study for Route 110 for the widening between the Regency and Powers Road, and we are always looking at the housing issues facing our young people and people that want to move into our community. I think with that, my experience speaks well for how we can address these issues. Thank you for listening tonight.
Thank you. Just a reminder to the folks here in the audience, if you come up with a question for any of the groups, just write it on the card and somebody will come pick it up, and
So raise your hand if you have.
and it might already be on our list, or it might not. So our first question is, affordable housing is one of the outcome strategies of the strategic plan. How will you work with the Affordable Housing Trust and other committees to create additional affordable housing for people of all incomes, abilities, household types, and stages of life? Mr. Schaffer.
So I think you can see my record in terms of how we've done this with the planning board to date. In the past, I've helped draft new zoning bylaws, such as the flexible development bylaw, senior residential multifamily, mill reuse bylaw. All of those had components that incentivize new affordable housing. In addition, I also chaired the CPA, the Community Preservation Committee, for several years, and I was the citizen lead who advocated to adopt CPA here in Westford back in 2001. Lastly, whenever we receive new proposals for developments on the planning board, I work every time to ensure that we have at least 10% in that component. That's an important component in all of our MBTA community housing overlay district projects, as well as the other more traditional subdivisions, be it a flexible development, open space, et cetera. So I think that's the way I approach it. Make sure we spread it across the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zhang.
Inclusionary zoning comes to mind first. So that allows for affordable options, which is a great first step in the direction. In addition, we need some innovative ideas, innovative ways of doing things like using the accessory dwelling units and mixed-use development, and those will be part of the innovative ideas. I know that accessory dwelling unit was part of a bylaw that was passed 5 years ago, and which is great. And in addition, we need to see the affordable options by age and by income, working for everyone with the townhomes, townhomes and the apartments, dwellings, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Your next question. What planning board actions would you support to impact the development of MBTA communities projects? Mr. Zhang.
First of all, I think we just need to make sure that we balance the progress with the preservation to make sure that the infrastructure is ready, and especially the residents are ready for that. And that actually is in our strategic plan for 2025.
Thank you. Mr. Schaffer. Mr. Schaffer?
He's on mute. You may need to unmute.
You're apparently on mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so we are working right now with some of these projects already, and what we're doing is kind of a negotiation with the developer. We are trying to follow the design guidelines that we have in our existing bylaw for MBTA Community Housing Overlay District. And we're doing everything we can to ensure that the objectives in the bylaw for Westford are satisfied, which include design as well as the appropriate setbacks and view screening from the surrounding areas. At the same time, trying to ensure that there's a substantial affordable component in the project, as well as access to other public services nearby. And that's a big challenge for us right now, as well as access to a pedestrian, sidewalk, and public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, planning board meetings are currently held only in person. Do you support holding planning board meetings in both person and remotely? If not, why not? If so, what would you do to move this issue forward? Mr. Schaffer.
I do support that. Obviously, it helps me immensely when I can participate remotely. We do allow planning boarders to participate remotely, and I have done so, and I think my track record is I've only missed one meeting in 5 years. As far as how we conduct public hearings, that's one where we are waiting for the lawyers to help us, as well as working with the select board and the Commonwealth, so that we satisfy open meeting law as well as the public hearing process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zhang.
I prefer in-person meetings. We can see even today, digitally, there are some technical problems. So in-person would, face-to-face meetings will be more effective in that case. And also, especially for planning board meetings, there can be a security component to it as well.
Okay, thank you. With many empty storefronts and vacant office space in Westford's commercial districts, what, if any, zoning bylaw changes would you support to allow for other uses of those spaces? Mr. Zhang.
So the mixed-use development crossed my mind, and I think that actually yields a lot of benefits, walkability, boosting the local business and residents, and that reduces traffic as well.
Thank you. Mr. Schaffer.
This is kind of on the border of the zone of the planning board as well as other boards. I think most importantly is the need for the planning board to work with the Economic Development Committee. And we've done so in the past. I'm fully in support of anything we can do to look at the development of those spaces. One of the things we've been doing recently is modifying our parking regulations. What we've discovered is that with the exception of the medical office spaces along our business corridor, most spaces no longer need the extensive parking that we have required in the past. We now have a lot of remote working from home, and that drives the parking requirements down from much of the office space. So anything we could do to increase the revenue in our tax base, I'm all for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next. Westford last did a comprehensive master plan in 2009. Please explain why you think the town needs or does not need a new master plan. Mr. Schaffer.
I think it is time for an update. However, it is an expensive proposition to update that master plan. So we are always looking for the funds through grants that would help us to do so. We are updating other portions. The housing plan has been updated recently. We are going to have the pedestrian study along Route 110 for the widening project, and we're going to have a study along Route 40. So both of these are important. You could think of them as annexes to the master plan. But yes, the master plan is 16 years old at the present time, and it probably should be updated. So and there's a lot, and now with MBTA communities and other forms of housing that weren't in there, or even considered 16 years ago, it's important. Lastly, we have achieved our housing goal of more than 10% over 8 years ago. And so these also affect and drive the requirement for updating that plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zhang.
Master plan as our guiding principle needs to be updated every 3 to 5 years. 2009 to me is totally out of date, especially considering in recent years we have incorporated multiple bylaws, and those needs to be reflected. In general, looking at the larger picture, we need to have an adaptive approach with the incremental growth, and looking at a master plan that has to reflect the adaptive approach to see what are the current needs and wants from the from the residents, from the current business landscape.
Okay, and this will be the final question before closing for you two. What are your goals for your 5-year term, Mr. Zhang?
So one thing is to make sure that we highly engage the residents. We've been talking about it for years. but there's a lot to be done. And demographically, we see that 20% of our population were born outside the U.S., including myself. 25% speak a language different than English. So when we're talking about collective voice, those voices need to be heard as well, preferably in their languages through translation. And the town, I just had a meeting the other day with the town management. They're open to having a round table with, for example, the Asian community, which I think is a great step. Number two is to make sure that we have the infrastructure that is balanced with the progress. And that's really key. And we need to prioritize the local control over the state mandates, especially those unfunded mandates, as well as the outside developers, because this is a town by Westford for Westford.
Thank you. Mr. Schaffer.
Thank you. I think most importantly is working on the housing and the business development along the Route 110 corridor. We've got MBTA community housing applications now to come in. I think we will see, obviously, a few of these come to fruition here in the next 5 years, and that's a top priority to ensure that they come in a beneficial manner for Westford. Pedestrian access. The Boston Road Improvement Project is now kicking off. I feel confident that in 2 years we'll have a good pedestrian connection from Westford Center down to the Route 110 Business District. The last one there is the pedestrian connection from the Regency over to Powers Road intersection, which would provide the connection to Bell of Westford in that area. So I think that also improves the access from those residents all the way up to the center. So I think those are probably the two most important. Lastly, accessory dwelling units. We have got to satisfy the new state law so that we have beneficial accessory dwelling units that are in keeping with Westford's housing goals. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to closing. Mr. Schaffer. One minute closing for you, Mr. Schaffer.
I'm sorry, I had to reset my timer.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for listening to us tonight and to myself especially. I hope I have earned your vote through my demonstration of knowledge of the issues. I have over 28 years of experience in planning here in Westford. I think we have important issues coming on the horizon. MBTA community housing, the new accessory dwelling units bylaw, and compliance with the state law. The Route 40 corridor and the Route 110 corridor zoning issues. We are looking to address the businesses and those needs at the same time addressing the desires for the residents that live in those areas. Lastly, we also have pedestrian improvements throughout the town. All of these are coming together in a positive way. Lastly, learning from what happened during COVID and how we can improve the access to businesses as well as keeping with the Westford character. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zhang.
I used to be a frequent traveler for many years, living on my luggage 200 days out of 300, showing less than desired love to my kids. And I was also less involved civically. So the one thing that I do miss on those travel days is to look out the window down at the land. I see that there are no lines, no border lines, no barriers, no walls across the cities and towns, across the states, across the countries, across cultures, across party lines. At night, when I look out the window, I see only lights. Lights from the city traffic, lights from households and lights at everybody's heart. I will work for you. I will pledge to put in my heart and soul for you if I'm elected to rekindle that light at everybody's heart. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Our next panel are uncontested candidates, I believe, Board of Health, Library Trustees, and School Committee.
People are saying they can't hear you, so if you could speak up.
And this is just to the TV, right? Is that microphone? Is this? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. All right. Somebody brought a kazoo there.
This one? Is that how it works? We'll follow that. I touched this one or something. No, see?
Oh, Shannon, okay, nope. But there's three, we're one share short.
Well, we got plenty of chairs over here. There you go. How does this work? Is this like mine or is this shared?
It's just, I guess it's shared, because we can share.
If we can't, we're going to be in a lot of trouble for the next 3 years.
I think mine was empty, so I'm thinking maybe that's the one.
Yeah, man. That's the same black.
No, this just goes to the TV. Right. So they can hear us fine, probably, if you're watching on TV. Okay. I think we're all set, and I will try to yell a little louder. So first of all, there is a candidate for Housing Authority who was unable to attend tonight, Patty Doobie. I am unable to attend candidates night due to a prior family commitment. I thank the League for the opportunity to participate and applaud their dedication to ensure all voters are informed. And next we will go to candidates for Board of Health. So for this round, you'll have 2-minute opening statement and 1-minute response to the questions. So, Ms. Granger.
Thank you to the League. I really appreciate you doing this. This is my 26th year living in Westford with my husband. We've raised our 3 children here, and they have all attended and graduated from Westford Public Schools. I began volunteering in Westford coaching soccer when my children were still babies. And as they entered and moved through the schools, I participated in PTO and Challenge Success. As they got older, I decided I'd like to contribute to the town by using my public health background and serving on the Westford Board of Health. I have a master's degree in public health from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and have worked for the Massachusetts Department of Public Health and various private healthcare companies and led teams of volunteers serving the Commonwealth during the early days of the COVID response. I've served for 3 terms on the Board of Health and look forward to serving for another term. During this term, I hope to help maintain the public health excellence Westford is known for, to make sure we continue to base our decisions and goals in science and fact. Public health faces many obstacles at this time, and I want to support and guide our department through this and in their preparations and ability to respond with excellence and agility to the challenges and situations that may arise. I also plan to use this term to mentor newer board members and others who may be interested in serving on the Board of Health in the future. I love the town of Westford and enjoy serving my community where I can. I try to respond quickly to emails from members of the community when they reach out with questions or concerns. And I appreciate your vote. Even when we are unopposed, that vote means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Grupel. I hope I said that correctly.
Gopal.
Okay.
I'm Dr. Stefan Gopal. I am new to the Board of Health. I actually filled a vacancy that I was recruited to apply for, and then was unanimously elected to by both the current Board of Health and the Select Board due to my background and expertise. So I have been educated both as a philosopher and biologist. I have trained as a scientist and a physician in my second career. We moved here after I finished my residency with my two daughters who have gone to school all the way up through Blanchard now here. And I have practiced as a primary care physician in the area since moving here in Maynard with Emerson Hospital and with Westford Internal Medicine at Mass General Brigham. I then, the reason I had the time for the Board of Health was I recently opened up my own practice, and I thought it would be time for me to be able to give back to the community. But I honestly find that I'm being thrust into almost a defensive position to help protect the community from things that are going on right now. I take a very evidence-based approach to things. I believe very much in ideas and values such as truth, science, expertise, knowledge, facts, and data. And I use that to apply to a number of problems, and I am excited to be doing that for the Board of Health and to be mentored by such people as Stephanie next to me. So I want to thank everyone for allowing me to be here today, and I want to thank everyone for allowing me to give back to the community. Thank you.
Okay, first question. And many of these questions, a 1-minute response is completely not enough time, but that's the way we operate here. So how might the changes in federal public health agency funding and services affect your understanding of public health issues and your ability to make recommendations for our community? Dr. Gruppo.
And that's what I sort of alluded to when I thought this was going to be a nice way to give back and work locally. I now recognize that we're going to have to stand up and be able to pull from information from other sources, reputable evidence-based sources, such as academic institutions and medical institutions, as we see funds and information being withdrawn from federal agencies that we would rely so heavily on. It's frightening to me that we have to do that, but I have no problem stepping up into that role. I've done it as I've practiced as a physician during a pandemic when we were dealing with a novel virus and learning new things every day, and that's how I will apply to any of these problems.
Thank you. Ms. Granger.
So the Massachusetts Department of Public Health has pledged to continue to provide as many resources as possible and information to the Commonwealth's health departments. Certainly, there's concern about their funding as well as the impacts that will have here locally. We will need to turn to good sources for information. Those may not be available from our federal government, and so we will need to rely on other reputable organizations and agencies, do what we can to be creative. Our department is really excellent at applying for grants. We'll hope grant money continues to be available because that subsidizes several other programs in the community, not just directly related to the health department. And we will do our best. I love finding fact. I love doing research, and I'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Next, acceptable levels of fluoride have been in the news. What sources of data would you use to answer questions and educate the community about acceptable levels? Ms. Granger.
So in my first term, as well as recently, questions arose about fluoridation. And I did a lot of research both times regarding this issue. I turned to the CDC, to the information from Johns Hopkins. I looked at international information. We were queried about why Europe doesn't provide fluoridation. They do support fluoridation at the level that United States recommends it and the level that we do it here in town. So I reviewed the articles that tended to lead to the questions, which were deemed to be not based in science and of poor quality research. So I'm pretty well versed at looking around at our various sources, whether that's the government or private institutions who do research and make recommendations in order to arrive at a position. And I feel confident currently that fluoridating our water is the way to go.
Thank you. Dr. Grupel?
I completely agree with Stephanie, and this question came up to us recently in the Board of Health, and I still agree with it. This is where she definitely is mentoring me to watch her to do the research on this and find the detailed data points, because to me, with all of my education, this was a done deal. I mean, all my scientist friends, all my physician friends, this was like a closed book. Like, fluoridating the water benefits the public, it benefits the children, it benefits their health, it benefits them in every aspect of their life you look at. Like, they have improvements in education, they then do better professionally, economically. I don't want to say it, but it's a no-brainer, and I'm frightened that we will be possibly disagreeing with the government and the Health and Human Service on something that I think is set.
Okay. Final question. What are the greatest public health issues facing Westford, and how should the board address them? Dr. Grupel.
Well, this is where I've learned a new thing. I had a lot that I thought would be on the table, and they definitely are. I think infectious disease, which I'm very interested in, preventative health. I'm board certified in family medicine and lifestyle medicine that focuses on preventative health. Mental health, I'm filling a position that was vacated by someone that was a strong advocate for mental health, and I want to carry on her legacy with that. And I'm also a big advocate for environmental protection and conservation. But in the first few Board of Health meetings that I sat on, I saw that zoning and septic is a big thing that comes up, and I'm a lifelong learner and was excited to learn about that, and quickly saw how that fits into things, though, about public health and the cleanliness of our water and our environment. And so I think I hit on the big ones.
Thank you. Ms. Granger.
So PFAS is one of the things that we're really looking at and working with the water department to address, but that doesn't address it for everyone. We have well water, and that's also something that we're working to look into and provide information for our citizens. Mental health and substance abuse clearly is one that's important to everybody, and we're working with our various partners throughout the community to make sure that we maintain and increase and make available services on that. Emergency preparation is really important. We know that with climate change and other things, that disasters and unforeseen things are in the future. So we work very closely with the MRC, the Upper Merrimack Valley Medical Reserve Corps, to make sure that Westford is prepared. We need space for our materials. That's part of the space challenges here in town. Environmental things. Currently, bird flu is a concern. The department is working closely with animal control on that. And disease prevention.
All the things.
Yeah.
It sounds like. Okay, thank you. Moving on to library trustees, health, books, stuff, things. Once again, 2-minute opening statement. We'll have a few questions following. Ms. Dirks.
All right, you'll see that I'm wearing 2 name tags. I don't have two names, I just have a nickname, and my nickname is Buffy. That's how everybody knows me, but please vote for me as Elizabeth. So that's why I'm showing this one out here. I got that nickname from my older sister. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for having us tonight here. This is a privilege, and we wanted to move to Westford because of Westford Academy. So we moved here in 1993, and my 3 children went through Westford Academy, and I was very happy about that. Now I'll get to my library history. In high school, I volunteered in the library, in the Sharon High School Library, and I loved it there. Never thought about it being a career, but as you can see, turned out to be a career because I worked in Westford Public Schools as a library media specialist as I worked on my master's degree. And then they hired me first to be in the 2 schools, Nabnasset and Robinson, and then I took over for Robinson and Crisafulli. So I began as a trustee then, as in 2006. So 19 years have included being part of planning, design, and now renovating that lovely library that's in the center. Why did I want to run again? Well, my presence is a way to stay on the project. I like to see things completed, and this is a chance to complete the library project. So the planning began in 2008. That was a long time ago, and this came before the town several times since 2012. Funding includes $8.6 million grant from MBLC, which is the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. Funding is also coming from the Friends of the Library, the Friends Foundation, as they fundraise. The MBLC grants, the Friends Foundation and the town votes all have come into this wonderful project. I, as a trustee, will be keeping part in the contract and the specific design plans, as well as keeping them on time and on budget. I would like to stay on as a trustee to see the new library complete. Enjoy it by many young adults and children. Enjoy access by anyone.
Time, please.
Enjoyed anyone by love. Loved by all.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Secor.
Okay. Thank you. I've had the privilege of serving on the library board for 2 3-year terms. I'm running for a third. The first 2 were eventful. We had COVID. And then we had a library project that came upon us a year earlier than we were expecting it because other libraries ahead of us on the priority list didn't go forward with their projects. So with the library project, we've been through the funding phase, we've been through the design phase, and we're now moving into the construction phase, which includes a move of the library off-site. That move was accomplished basically a week ago, and the library will reopen in a couple of weeks at 515 Groton Road. As with Buffy, I do want to see this project through, but I think we have some other challenges in the coming years, including the library budget. We've needed a waiver from the Board of Library Commissioners because our appropriations budget for materials hasn't been what it needs to be by formula. We're going to need another waiver in 2026. We'll be okay in 2027, but we do have that to deal with. We have staffing. We have a number of staff members who have retired, will be retiring soon. And then we have the issue of intellectual freedom, just free speech, free access to information, which is, it's always important, and I'll just say it seems particularly important now.
Thank you. Ms. Siegel?
Hi, I'm Mary Siegel, and I have been a resident of this town only since 2018. My youngest is a WA graduate, class of 2024. My oldest is a graduate of Oliver Ames, which is in Easton, Mass. And I became an empty nester last year when she graduated. So I decided to do something to give back. And I reached out to Ellen, the library director, and asked her if I could do this. And she said it was full. So I got a call from her maybe about a year later saying, actually, someone's moving away. So are you still interested? And I said yes. So I actually have, just for a few months, was appointed by joint appointment by Select Board and the Library Board of Trustees to fill this position, and that's how I landed on the ballot. I am personally a bookworm. I have been a bookworm my whole life since I was growing up in Norton, Mass. I have a master's in teaching from BC. I decided to follow a career in publishing, and I started in children's publishing, and now I am a product sales manager at a large information technology company. So I've made the last 30 years in publishing, and I sell digital content to libraries, and I sell to academic and public libraries, so Harvard to Boston Public Library. So I have a lot of passion for libraries, and I'm a library advocate, and I've been doing that my entire career. So as a library trustee, I can bring my industry knowledge and this love of libraries to make a meaningful impact in the community. And as Glenn commented, it's more critical than ever, in the environment that we're in, to not only usher the building project to success, but also to make sure that these core library values, such as access, equity, sustainability, freedom of speech, are preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. First question. Library operating hours were cut back within the last year due to budgetary constraints. What could be done to increase the hours, and what are the trade-offs? Mr. Secor.
Could be done to increase the hours. I think the hours are going to be what they are while we're up at 515 Groton Road. Okay, sorry. Louder, please. I thought that was for them. I thought that was for them to applaud. No. So I'm not sure what the hours will be while the library is off-site. By the time we come back in 2027, we'll certainly work on squeezing out of the budget enough to be able to restore the hours that we had to reduce.
Thank you. Ms. Siegel?
I have to say I concur with Glenn. I mean, I'm not sure that the hours will be expanded in this time period. And we're also in a really tight budget crunch all over the country, as you probably have noticed. And I think that this is a really good time for people to utilize services like digital content and to, bring that into their homes, because that's a privilege that we have as library patrons, to be able to access that content and to be able to do it that way, so that in case there isn't enough budget to hire extra staff, you can still get to the content and you can still benefit from the library in that way, which is, again, a huge privilege. And we're really lucky that we live in a state that prioritizes libraries.
Thank you. Ms. Dirks?
I would agree that we are not in a position right now to add to the hours. And one thing that we're doing at 515 Groton Road is there's going to be a lot more accessible technology pieces available to you, because the books aren't going to be quite as available as they have been over here. So in a time that's tight with budget and a time that's tight with trying to access, I will encourage you to consider getting online, getting some of the books that are and materials that are available through an online format.
Thank you. Next. What are the policies to deal with any demands to remove or restrict access to books in the library's collection? Ms. Siegel. You might all have the same answer on this one.
Well, I mean, it's a library mandate to preserve intellectual freedom, so I don't believe that there's any consideration of removing content from the library for that reason.
But the question is actually, what are the policies to deal with demands that
Well, I think the answer would be that as a library, we preserve intellectual freedom, so that's not really an option as a library.
Ms. Dirks?
And we do have policies, and we update those policies as needed. And so one of those policies is the intellectual freedom. And so if somebody challenged that problem, we would be bringing that back to the trustees, and then it would be shown to that patron that that was the policy, and we have no other option other than to live with that policy, and those policies are kept updated on a regular basis. So when things change, we have new ones or wording that needs to be changed as well.
Thank you. Anything to add, Mr. Secor?
Not really. We do have a policy. I don't remember all the elements of it off the top of my head. And there's no sort of hearing or anything that formal in that way. But I think we would certainly be considerate and try to understand why someone is objecting to something that we have, which might not even just be a book. It can be something that's hanging. It can be a piece of artwork. We wouldn't necessarily remove it, but we would at least try to understand why a person found that to be objectionable.
Thank you. And the final question. The library's children's programs will be moved to the Rowdenbush building and the NAB school. What are the plans for holding programs for adults while the Main Street building is being renovated and expanded? Ms. Derricks.
Some of those programs can be held in the new building. It's just that with the amount of children that we have and parents, it makes it a little bit tight. And some of those programs will also be held online so that you can watch and be part of them in a large setting, but you will be in a small, the person running the program or leading the program will be in a small setting. And that's a lot like when we had COVID. A lot of our programs were done online, and they were wonderful, and that gave chances for questions and answers. So we will continue that program, and maybe we were prepared with a pandemic.
Thank you. Mr. Secor?
I think the adult programming is going to be pretty limited for the course of the construction phase while the library is off-site. I don't know, and someone else might know, whether we have plans to run adult programs off-site, but I'm not aware of them. Realistically, the adult programming is going to be somewhat limited.
Thank you. Ms. Siegel?
I don't really have anything to add other than, to the point that it'll be limited due to the space constraints. Again, going online isn't preferable for everybody. And so I would say, as a trustee, please ask us for what you're thinking of if you have that need, and maybe there's some way that we could accommodate that.
Okay. I just have one question that maybe you all know the answer. How long is this project going to take, the renovation of the library?
We hope to be in by
2027.
Okay, just so that people can kind of,
yeah.
Yeah, it's about
You all
a
might
two-year.
know that,
It's
but-
about a two-year project.
okay. Thank you.
right.
Our next group of one, is school committee candidate, and there is another candidate, Jessica Silverman, who provided the following statement. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this important event and extending an invitation to me as one of the candidates for school committee. I wish I could be here with you all tonight, but I am traveling home from the ASU GSV conference, where I have been learning about the impact of AI in education. I look forward to bringing these insights to my work on the school committee. So, Ms. Farnsworth, go ahead with your opening statement.
Thanks to the League and to Joanne for moderating, and to WestfordCAT, and to everybody here in the room, as well as those watching online. I am Shayna. I always introduce myself so that people know how to pronounce my name. Wasn't on my mom and dad's list when they picked Shayna to figure out that no one would ever know how to say it, but I am a problem solver. That's really who I am at the core. I really love to look at issues, peel back all the different layers, and just kind of figure out what makes sense when I'm approaching a problem. I am very passionate, and you will see a lot of that come out over the next few years. I've been in Westford for 12 years. I have a daughter at Blanchard in 6th grade, and we have had a great experience in Westford Public Schools so far. Professionally, I have 20 years of experience working in staffing, recruiting, and human resources, and my work involves a lot with contracts, policy creation, vendor relationships, and doing like employee relations issues and just handling really tough situations. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education and human development, so a little bit of a background there. In the town, I started being engaged on the COVID task force through the school during COVID times, and that was kind of the first time I served on a board. I also served on a budget task force in 2023. So for those of you that have read the task force report, that was a really extensive project that we spent many months coming up and combing through the budget and making sure that we understood revenues, efficiencies, and areas of opportunity for the town. And I'm really looking forward to and taking this new endeavor.
Okay. So, your first question. Given the changes in the federal government's stance on diversity, equity, and inclusion, do you think the school committee should revise any of its current DEI policies? If so, how, or if not, why not?
I do not think that we should be revising the policies. We did just update the transgender policy. It's transgender and gender nonconforming student policy. So that has been recently updated, and I agree with the updates on that policy. I think we have values here in the town of Westford and within our school system to make sure that all of our students feel like they belong in our schools and that they feel included in the spaces that they're learning and where they're supposed to be thriving. I think we will need to kind of roll with punches as they come from the federal level, for lack of a better term, and making sure that we hold true to the values of our community while making sure, obviously, that we're not out of line with any federal guidance. I'm hoping that being in the state of Massachusetts, we will have some shelter from some of the things that are happening on the federal level, and that we'll be able to still easily preserve the community we've worked so hard to build here.
Thank you. Next. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the schools, and what would you do to address them as a member of the school committee?
I think, obviously, the elephant in the room, and the easiest one is the budget challenges. We have made cuts year over year, going back to when I first started following the school budget in about 2017, 2018. We have slowly chipped away at our budget and made cuts in all the places where we have seen the best areas, or the areas we could make the most impact to the budget. I think that the building enrollments are something to keep an eye on, and also just the infrastructure of our buildings and determining what we're going to be doing with the Robinson building through the Robinson study, and making sure that we are also following through the strategic plan and through the feasibility plans that we have already done on the school buildings.
Thank you. And finally, what are your thoughts on retaining the current elementary configuration, K to 2nd and 3rd to 5th split model, versus switching to all K through 5 elementary schools?
I am a proponent of reconfiguration. I think it is something that's been on my radar screen for many years before I even got involved. I think it has less transitions for our students, especially for some of our learners that struggle with transition points. So I think it can be a challenge for some, even though in my household, my daughter did fine with those transitions, but not all of our students are the same. I think it will allow for greater teacher collaboration across grades that could be impactful to be able to move people within grades by working together in cohorts. I think there'll be some benefits to families to have their children in the same schools and not to have 2 or 3 different drop-offs at 2 or 3 different times. And I think it'll have a little bit more flexibility ultimately with our school start times. We've made progress to change start times for next year, but if we're reconfigured, we might be able to even move them a little bit further back so that our high school learners and middle school learners are more in line with the Pediatric Association recommendations. So I think we just need to continue to review enrollment, continue space utilization, and figure out what we're doing with the Robinson building to make that determination.
And that's it for this portion, so
easy breezy.
You all step
Thank
down.
you.
Thank you all.
a glass for me?
Thank you.
I know, right? Is that gonna upset the league? That's good. Thank you. Perfect.
I was just bringing you a glass.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Alrighty, yeah. Okay, I think we're ready. So for this portion, 2-minute opening, 1-minute response to questions, and a 2-minute closing. And I will rotate kind of at random, so you're not always first or last or always following the same person, that sort of thing. So with opening statements, we'll start with Ms. Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for creating this event. For 100 years, the League has been a nonpartisan organization deeply committed to making sure voters are informed. As a select board member, it will be my mission to do that for the town of Westford. I believe that transparency between town government, town departments, and residents will help our town run more efficiently. Valerie Young has been doing an incredible job with this on the school committee, and I intend to follow in suit as a select board member, working closely with WestfordCAT and exploring avenues where information can be easily accessible for all of our residents. This past year, our town was able to present a balanced budget, despite the override not passing. But this was done using one-time funds, and this is not sustainable going forward. Along with our current budgetary struggles, we are also facing uncertainties on funding we receive from the state. When it comes to making decisions, it's not just about the numbers. It's about keeping our schools top-notch, keeping our town safe, and maintaining a quality of life. As a select board member, I will offer creative ways not only to cut spending, but to increase our revenue without overtaxing our residents. This past year, we made changes such as centralized fueling and debt restructuring. I would also like to look into things like regionalization of services and boosting our commercial growth. Our schools, the safety of our residents, and transparency are my top priorities. I believe in making decisions that are fair, pragmatic, and focused on long-term success. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzpatrick?
Thank you to the League, and thank you, Joanne, for giving up your evening to come moderate for us. My family and I have lived in Westford since 2009, so about 16 years. But we've been connected to Westford since the 90s. We've raised our 3 kids here. I still have 2 kids in the Westford public school system. My oldest graduated last year, and they began their school career in Rodenbush before we went to public schools. My professional background is in accounting and finance. I earned my CPA license after undergrad working in the public accounting sector. I then moved up to Massachusetts and earned my MBA while working for private companies. After the birth of my 3rd child, I decided to leave the workforce and stay at home. And then I decided to start volunteering in my community. So my first venture in Westford was to volunteer with the Friends of the Library Board. I served as their assistant treasurer and then their treasurer. I also co-led a Girl Scout troop for a number of years. I spent a season on the soccer field. And most recently, I served 3 terms on Westford's Finance Committee. In that three terms, a lot of it I spent on the Capital Committee. I also spent some time with the Slider Committee, first as an alternate and then as a full member. There's a lot of needs in town. There's a lot of projects being planned, and we need to carefully scrutinize how we spend our dollars and allocate our funds. We need to better collaborate between the boards, the schools, the town departments, and all our residents and hear what their needs and desires are. And we need to work collectively to do what's best for Westford.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Great. thank you to the league for hosting. These are always tremendous events and very well attended, which is impressive. So my name's Sean Kelly. I'm running for select board, and I'll tell you why. Why? Because I love this town. I loved it since I first came and visited it some 20 years ago. My wife and I moved here and decided to keep our boys here, our 3 boys here, really for the schools. So we came for the schools, but we ended up staying for everything else. We stayed for the beautiful trails and ponds that we're surrounded by how our community so wonderfully makes it seem like a small town despite there being 25,000 people. And how our community members all seem to rally behind a family who's in crisis or in need. So that's the why. I'm no stranger to town government, and in fact, I've been on the school committee since 2019. I've served 2 terms so far. I'm really proud of a lot of the work that we've done to date, which is we've implemented full-day kindergarten for working-class families. We've raised staff salaries to reflect the dedication that these good town servants provide. And we've developed social emotional or policies that prioritize social emotional well-being for all of our students, particularly our most vulnerable ones. So my biggest priority, amongst many, is sustainable funding for our schools, police, and fire. And I'll get more into my other priorities, but thanks again. Look forward to telling you more about myself.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you to the League for hosting this candidates night tonight. My name is Megan O'Connell, and I'm running for a select board seat to keep Westford affordable. I was born and raised in Massachusetts and have lived in Westford for 7 years with my spouse and 6 kids. My youngest 4 are still in the Westford schools, and like many of you, I want to keep our schools strong. Our community faces challenging economic times. Last year's override debate forced us to pick between funding our schools and public safety or protecting lower-income residents. I'm running because I know we can do both. My experience as a seasoned engineer with over 30 years in medical devices and biotech has shown me that the most effective solutions rarely lie at the extremes. By embracing diverse perspectives, thinking creatively, and working towards compromise, we can find solutions that meet the core needs of all Westford residents. My goal is simple: reduce tax pressure while increasing funding for schools and public safety, a true win-win for Westford. Here's what I'll focus on. 1, level service cost savings. I will collaborate with the various boards and departments in town to explore level service cost savings opportunities, such as regionalization of certain services, switching to in-house busing, and encouraging multiple options for capital requests. 2, rebuilding our commercial base. I will help our town engage with local industry groups to explore opportunities. I will also work to promote mixed-use developments instead of residential-only developments. This is critical to shift some of the tax burden away from our residents. 3, housing affordability. I will work with the planning board to encourage housing that is affordable for seniors and working families alike, today and in the future. 4, diversity of thought. To make the best choices for Westford, we must encourage a diversity of perspectives on our boards and committees to ensure that all options are considered. By doing this, we can allocate more resources to our schools without overburdening taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. First question. Should the town continue taking steps to increase the use of clean, renewable energy in our municipal, commercial, and residential buildings? Should the select board continue working to have the town adopt the specialized energy code? Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Well, we're all free to do as much as we can to our own properties to be as efficient as possible. I would defer to the Permanent Town Building Committee in evaluating plans for our commercial buildings and the cost benefits savings, whether we can afford it or not. That is expensive, and we are in a budget crisis. And what was the second part of that? I'm sorry.
Should the select board continue working to have the town adopt the specialized energy?
As we've seen with MBTA, you know, we have infrastructure problems nationally, and it's hit home. The grid is not able to sustain more than one development for MBTA, so it's too premature for us to push for the specialized energy code under that.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connell.
Great. So there's two great questions. I think, first of all, you know, I spent some time looking over the net zero roadmap that the town developed several years ago, and two things struck out at me. One is that, you know, we only had 2% of the town gave input to that roadmap, and I think as a town it would be beneficial if we redo that to get more input from this diverse community that we have. You know, Sean mentioned that we have about 24,000 residents here, and over 23% of them, you know, are Asian. 25% of people 5 and over, you know, speak a language other than English at home. So I think it's important that we first go back and get that diverse input into our roadmap. The second thing I'll say is that, you know, that roadmap also says that it's important to reach net zero, but in the most affordable and least economically disruptive way possible. So I think that's something that we need to keep in mind as well.
I think people are trying to yell, but
yes.
And I can hear the blowers back there, so it is a little difficult. I get that. We're trying. Mr. Kelly.
Okay, thanks for the question. So where it stands currently, the town has already adopted the stretch code, right, which 200 or so other communities in the state have adopted. So that's a great start. The townwide strategic, the town's vision has already adopted a long-term view towards sustainability. So I think one of the ways that we can get there is by adopting something like the specialized code. Now, my concern would be is obviously the article failed at town meeting, right? So I think one of the problems that we have is that something's getting lost in the messaging of it. And I think the biggest question that people have is how much is this going to cost? Like, what's the delta, right? And if we can figure out exactly what the delta is, I think more folks in town would be far more likely to embrace something like the specialized code.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan.
Thank you. I've had the honor of serving on the Conservation Commission in town for the past 4 years. So our sustainability and the health of our natural resources is high on my priority list. I supported the specialized code. Hearing that we are having problems with the grid over on 110, we're at capacity over there. I do feel that it not going through was a blessing in disguise. I think that we would have not have had as much opportunities for growth on 110 if we were restricted by this code. But this is the way we're going forward. This is the way of the future. We really need to look towards more sustainability, and I think that the future of Westford is going to eventually adapt the specialized code, and I really think that for the future of our kids, we really need to do this.
Thank you. Next. Given changes in the federal government's stance on diversity, equity, and inclusion, what is your opinion on the DEI policies for the town? What, if anything, do you think needs to be done, and how would you reassure and support concerned residents, especially our immigrant and LGBTQ+ communities? Mr. Kelly.
Look, this is already impacting the schools, and this is already impacting Westford. The current proposal by the federal administration would impact Westford. It is Article 1 funding, and there's several $100,000s that this could be tied to. So I say that up front, right? There is a financial concern to this. Nonetheless, there is no time greater than now that we have to stand up and advocate for our most vulnerable populations in town. And here is a chance to do so, to do what's right, to stand up for what's right, and to continue doing what Westford does best, which is to embrace our neighbors and to love our neighbors and to fight for them in times of crisis.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzpatrick?
One of the great things about Westford is that we are a very diverse community, as we've heard a couple times tonight. And what makes us great is all the different stages of life people are in that are in the community, but also the different walks of life and the different ethnic backgrounds. I think organically we do a very good job of celebrating our diversity. I do think that we need to work and bridge some divisions that are in town and try and get a group that is not so polarizing with each other.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan?
Thank you. Westford is an amazingly diverse community, and we are all equals in this town. And I hope that we all feel included in this town. So I fully support DEI in our towns. And I know a lot of our residents are feeling unsafe right now. So I think what we can do as a town is to educate people on their rights. The more we know, the more powerful we are. So I think as a town, we really need to build up our education and let people know that we care and we're here and how can we help.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connell?
So diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to me, and as other people have said, we have a very diverse community. Myself, my two youngest children are immigrants. You know, we adopted them from China years ago when they were young children. And I think we can do a better job as a town, bring in all of these different groups together to get the ideas, get the different perspectives. And that's kind of what I talked about when I talk about bringing diversity of thought to boards and committees. And oftentimes it comes in different races and genders and sexualities, but that's not the primary purpose. The primary purpose of diversity is to get diversity of thought. And again, I look around the room tonight, the town's 23% Asian. I think I only see one here. So how can we do better as a town to bring out all aspects of the community?
Thank you. Here's a question from somebody here. Do you support examining a change to different tax rates for residential and commercial property? Ms. O'Connell?
That's a great question. I wouldn't categorically say no, but I think this is not the right time to do that. I think first we need to start building up our commercial properties. Many of our comparable towns have about 85% of their tax revenues from residences and 15% from commercial. About 5 years ago, we were about 86%, 14. This year, we're about 90%, 10%, and moving further into just residential. So I think first we need to look at policies to revitalize our commercial sector, especially along Route 110. Then, we may come to a point in time where we think about implementing different tax rates for commercial properties, but I don't think the time is now. I think we need to find other ways to revitalize that sector first.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan?
Thank you. I think that if we changed the tax rate to be higher for commercial properties, it would drive companies away. And we really need to build our economic growth in this town, our commercial growth. The residents in our town are taking on 90% of our tax revenue burden, and only 10% is commercial. So I look forward to working with our Economic Development Committee and figuring out ways that we can get more businesses into town. But I don't think that changing the tax rate is going to help us in that situation. So I feel that it's something that is attractive to Westford for businesses, and I think that we need to stick to that.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzpatrick?
We've looked at this in the past, and for right now, if you changed the tax rate, you would have minuscule effect on the individual taxpayer, and you would have a huge impact on the commercial taxpayer. So before we do anything like that, we would have to grow our commercial base. I do wonder if there's a possibility to look at some other areas. I have the luxury of paying the tax bill on the open space in my neighborhood, and for a long time, that bill actually declined. There was no appreciation in that open space land. So I think that not only would you look at commercial and residential, you could look at open space, you could look at conservation restricted lands that were private, you could look at agricultural lands and kind of look at a whole scope.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I think it would be easy or attractive to pursue something like this because 90% of our tax revenues come from residential, right? So an easy argument is to say, okay, well, here's one way that we can take some of the burden off of the residential taxpayer. I think it's kind of short-sighted, though, because as many of my colleagues have pointed out, the problem with that is you could dissuade potential large corporate entities from coming into town. I think it's one of the things that makes Westford unique and attractive compared to surrounding towns, many of which have a variable tax rate like has been described. So the fact that Westford has one tax rate across the board is attractive. I will point out, we've had large businesses like Red Hat that have left. So that's a problem, right? We have to look at ourselves and what we're doing and see if we can continue to attract businesses like that.
Thank you. The pressures on balancing the town budget will continue to grow. Do you have criteria that you would use to decide whether to support an override or debt exclusions to fund town services and projects? Ms. Donovan.
Thank you. We are coming up on some unpredictable times from our state funding. We don't know where, or we don't know, there's a lot of unknowns with state and federal funding right now. So there are going to be some tough decisions to be made in the future. And as a select board member, I want to make sure that all of the information is out there for our residents so that we understand why we need to make these tough decisions. I want to make sure that our schools are our top priority. We need to invest in our future, and that is our children. And did I answer that question? Yeah, okay. There you go.
Ms. O'Connell.
So I would say that I would have some subjective criteria for that. And it really comes down to, if we go back to some of the work that was done in the budget task force report that Shana was a part of, there's about 24 great recommendations, both in terms of increase in revenue and cut in costs and expenses. And very few of those have really been explored in depth. So I think as a town and as a potential select board member, we need to really dig into those options and see which ones of those make sense for Westford as a town. But I think in general, the town needs to show, and I've heard this from many people in town over the last year, the town needs to show significant progress in cutting expenses and saving money before they even think about going back to the residents for an override. That's what I'm hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. So I think what we would need to do first is to really hear from the community after taking a long look at the budget and specifically what further reductions we would be looking at should a further override not be implemented. The reality of it is that we've lost 51 positions in the past year in the schools. We're lined up to lose 12 more this year. The schools have been reduced every year since I've been part of the school committee. At some point, our top status as a school district is it's going to be affected. So we have to be very clear with the community as to what it would look like if an override didn't pass, essentially. So I'd have to wait to see exactly what was being proposed, but those are my thoughts.
Ms. Fitzpatrick.
So there's a lot still that we can do to reduce our costs, and we need to get back onto the budget task force recommendations, as well as with the 9 years I've spent on FinCom, I have my own list of recommendations that I would make and bring to the table. And also Governor Healy right now has a bill that I would hope that our legislatures would push forward, which would give us a little bit more relief. One of the things mentions is the OPEB contribution. We spend $5.6 million in our budget just to catch up an unfunded liability, which is a lot of dollars that could go towards operations. And she also mentioned things like an extended debt term for if we built a school, it would be 40 years instead of 30. That all provides relief. So I think we need to fully exhaust any and all options on saving money in the budget before we push an override.
Thank you. Given the past and current assessments for municipal and school facilities, how would you prioritize addressing the recommendations? I hope that makes sense to you.
Say that one more time?
Yeah, sure. Given the past and current assessments for municipal and school facilities, I'm guessing that means there's been some kind of review of the facilities. How would you prioritize addressing recommendations? And I'm assuming that means for renovations, updates, that kind of thing. Nobody's saying otherwise. So we'll go with that. Ms. Fitzpatrick.
It's, as the audience is noticing, it's a little premature on that because we have a lot of stuff going on right now. So we're not able to make that assessment. The town is spending money on a facilities study where we can evaluate all the buildings. The town meeting just passed looking at the Robinson School and incorporating some other schools into that where we might consolidate and then potentially repair or build. It's just too early to take that question and have an answer.
I'll go with that. Move on to the next. Okay. So, what are your views of the strategic plan the select board recently adopted? What?
You didn't ask that question.
Yeah, we're skipping it. It apparently makes no sense.
1
Okay.
point for me.
There you go.
Well, it's moving on. The questions came in from all sorts of places, and sometimes when you put something in a doc, like I'm sure everybody's done this, like, oh, why is that there? So I read it out loud, and everyone heard it and was like, right, why is that there? So moving on. What are your views of the strategic plan the select board recently adopted? Which outcome areas would you prioritize? Are there any you would like to see changed? Mr. Kelly.
So the townwide strategic plan, I think it's important, and there's two things that well, first of all, I agree with everything that's in there, but the parts that struck me as being most important to us as we move forward is our prioritization of essentially our school district, right? I think it's one of the things that makes Westford unique. It's why people raise their children here. It's why so many families continue to stay here long after. I grew up in New Hampshire, and I didn't really have that experience when I left my town. Kind of everyone else did too. My wife is a townie here, and many of her friends growing up are still in the town and are raising their family here. So I think it's great that the towns realize that, and that's part of our strategic plan. The other aspect is sustainability. I think it's it's already been discussed today, but something that's very important to me and I think needs to be on the town's radar in every building that we have going forward. So,
Thank you. Ms. O'Connell.
So I think it's great that the town has a strategic plan. I think I'll say similarly to what I talked about with the net zero roadmap, and that is that I think we can do better as a town to get more diverse input into these plans before we start marching off and implementing them. And I think we can see the results of that in some of these recent elections and town meetings that we've had, where tons of work is put in by a lot of well-intentioned people to implement something, to have it fail at town meeting or fail at the ballot box. And I think, no, it's not totally because of the input, but I think that's a big driver of it. So I would suggest that, the select board look at redoing that strategic plan and find a way to get better input. And maybe that's by, utilizing our annual surveys to try to get more people to contribute to what they want the strategic plan to look like.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan?
Thank you. The word that keeps popping out to me in the master plan is sustainability. Sustainability, fiscal sustainability, sustainability in general. I think that looking forward at how our decisions that we make today affect future generations is beautifully written in the master plan. My daughter just started kindergarten. She's the 6th generation of our family to live here. And so the sustainability of Westford is very important to me. And I don't think I would change anything. I think I would boost the communication with the town, figure out what avenues do we need to take to get more people in town involved and educated on what is going on.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzpatrick?
I found the strategic plan to be pretty much basic principles that we all want: responsible government, educational opportunities, affordable housing, and sustainability. So, I don't have a problem with them. I think they're pretty basic things that everyone would want. The one thing I would mention on sustainability is if we're going to do projects that are environmentally friendly, we actually need to go forward with them. And the example I'm going to give is the Blanchard roof. We paid extra to implement or to brace it for solar, and we never saw a cost benefit payback period on installing solar. So why would we pay extra if we're just going to let it sit? So.
Thank you. Next question. Do you think Westford should have a policy regarding federal deportation activities? Ms. O'Connell.
That's a great question. And like I said a few minutes ago, my 2 youngest daughters are immigrants. So I certainly don't want them to be deported. And I would do everything to stop that. So I think that's what I would say at first. Apart from that, it's not within our purview as a town to get into that. I think we have enough of our own issues going on right now with the budget and potential overrides in the near future. Not that what's going on in Washington isn't important, but I think that can distract us from the more important work that we need to focus on here. This is where we can have the greatest impact. We can individually, talk with our representatives and senators and state house and all of that, and we should all do that on a regular basis. But I think as a select board, our focus needs to be in this town because we have some big problems here that we need to solve.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Great, thank you. I think this one's tough, particularly because there's tiers of laws, whether we like it or not, right? Which is the municipal level, the state level, and then the federal level, and so on and so forth. So it's, we can't be in conflict with any federal laws, right? I mean, or state laws, or we open the town up to essentially being sued or litigation or something along those lines. But nonetheless, we have a large immigrant community in Westford and surrounding communities. So, I mean, I'd be happy to look at it, see if there was a policy, but it's difficult to say whether or not we could put something that wouldn't be in conflict with other state with federal laws. So,
thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick.
I agree with what they both said. I don't know how much we can do or have influence as select board members for our small town of Westford, and like Sean said, I mean, we can't really do anything that's in conflict with federal law.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan.
That is a true statement. We obviously cannot fight federal law, but I think that what we can do as a town is, again, to educate and know our rights and reach out to our neighbors is something that we as residents can do for one another, is to reach out, see how your neighbors are doing, offer help any way you can, and for the town to offer education on this. I got the email from the Nabnasset school about their policy for ice coming into the school, and my heart dropped. And I, you know, we are residents here, and so I think there's a lot of people in town that are scared, and I think the best that we can do as a town is to educate and reach out to each other.
Thank you. What do you think should be the short-term next steps and the long-term plan for the former fire station on the Common? Mr. Kelly.
It's a good question. I mean, I think I think what's at the heart of the question is space utilization. And the town is at a turning point right now. We have, there was the town space study. We have the Robinson study. There's a lot of discussion as to how the town is using its spaces. We have an opportunity, particularly with the Robinson study, to figure out, are we doing things right? And are there better ways that we can service our community? So, you know, before I commit to any specific task as to what I think X building should be used for, I think we need to continue this process and go through it and see what space we're going to have in 10 years and what our needs are.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connell.
That's a great question that, frankly, I hadn't anticipated tonight. But what I think of is that we do have a lot of potential big-ticket items coming down the road in the next few years. We have the Robinson School study that was just approved last month. And there may be a recommendation out of that to build a new school, which is not going to be cheap. So I think we need to keep that in mind before we start looking at long-term plans for that fire station in the center. Because whatever we do with that, whatever we want to do with that, everything costs money. So I think right now it's an issue of priorities. If we're in an economic time where the town had no problem balancing their budget every year, then it might be a good time to think about what we could do with that facility. But that might be a few years down the road.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan.
Thank you. As far as a short-term fix for that building, I know WestfordCAT is very much interested in that building for their lease is up over on Route 40, and I think that that would be an amazing opportunity for the town. I'm very interested in reading their proposal to us. They would be able to fix up that building, and it would cost them a lot less than the town. And our communications would be right there, centralized, right where we have most of our meetings at Town Hall. So I'm very interested in exploring that. As far as long-term, I really am looking forward to reading the facilities assessment report. And once that information is available, I'd be able to make a better recommendation. But I think that as a short term, we should really look into WestfordCAT turning into that building.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Well, interesting. I just recently had a conversation with somebody that told me that building had won awards, so I'm curious to learn more of that. I think before we get down the road too far, we do need some of that facility study information to come out, but I did go to some of those meetings, and one of the common themes from Town Hall was storage, and it's a garage, basically, so it would make great short-term storage. The building itself has good bones. It's got a good foundation to support the fire trucks, which I also recently learned. So I do think we could somehow use that building to our advantage and implement and include it into our facilities.
Thank you. What should the select board do to encourage more residents to apply to fill the vacancies on many town boards and committees? And when you have the answer, tell every other town what it is. Ms. Fitzpatrick.
So it's interesting, they just talked about this in the select board meeting this week, about filling positions on boards and seeking people that are less active on those boards, their involvement, and maybe even consulting chairs. So I think that would actually help. I think sometimes we have people that sit on boards for a long time, and then it intimidates other people from putting out the citizen action forms. So I think that that's a great step to go forward and try and get some fresh blood on some of these boards.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connell?
It's a great question and one that I'm interested in. I think some people know that I've talked about an issue with this for a while. I think there are a number of things that we can do, and one maybe simple thing is when you go on the website right now, there's a way you can look for empty seats, and that's great. But there's no easy way to search for seats that are about to, or terms that are about to expire. And I think, if we make that available, if we start, maybe sending out communications, maybe it's part of the survey at the beginning of the year. Here's a list of board seats and committee seats that are going to expire this year. And we welcome all citizen activity forms. May not get any, but I think that's part of the problem, is that many people don't even know that there's an opportunity to send in a form for a seat that's already filled if it's going to expire. So I think that's one of the easiest things we can do to try to remedy this.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan?
Thank you. I think educating our residents about what's going on in town is a good way to get people to want to be involved. I think that we need to bring in more subcommittees to our committees. I think that would be more attainable for people to be involved in a subcommittee instead of having, the big burden of being on a committee. And I think that our hybrid meetings are a great way to get more people involved. So, yeah, education, subcommittees, I think would be great. That way we can really dig deep into issues that maybe the committee is just overworked on, and we get a group of people so passionate about one specific thing going on, and that would really help out the committee in a big way.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Great. I think the easiest thing that we can do, which really doesn't cost us anything, is to remove barriers for qualified people to participate in town meetings. The reality of it is that we have we're a very well-educated community. There's very many qualified community members who would be great additions to many of the boards that we have. However, because of work-life balance or having young children, it can be difficult to get to, let's say, a school committee meeting that runs until midnight. So, we have to be conscientious of that, how long meetings are going, and also encouraging remote participation. It is a very useful tool, and as we saw tonight, it can allow people to join us who are in a different country and still partake in our town governance. So,
Okay. We have one final question, then we'll go to closings. What steps should the select board be taking to follow through on the resolution passed at special town meeting requesting the select board explore options to enable voters to vote on articles without physically attending town meeting? And that's a little bit of a trick question, but Ms. O'Connell.
Also a great question. So that is a change that needs to happen at the state level. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe the select board just recently sent a letter to the State House to request they look into that. If not, I would certainly support doing so. I would also support creating a special committee of residents and interested parties to further explore what that might look like. And I know it has been done in the past, but technology has changed over the last few years, and there may be more options or better options. We can also look at what Wayland is trying to do. I believe they've also petitioned the state to allow for some sort of remote voting. But I would definitely support looking into that.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Yeah. So I have two components to this. It is we'd have to approach the state on trying to do remote participation in the town meeting. I don't love that idea. I would prefer to do more of a ballot after the fact. I can't visualize how we would participate remotely, electronically, and ensure that it's not our kids at the computer. So it might just be out of my realm of understanding the technology. I think we can make town meeting more efficient and effective if we put all of the contentious articles at the beginning. We generally know what they are. Going into the town meeting we just had, I knew what was going to be contentious. We've put things on the ballot before. The town meeting has decided, and I don't think that that's unfounded for something that's really big and contentious in town.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, so I think as it's been pointed out, there's a state law that would be an obstacle to this being implemented anytime soon. But nonetheless, I mean, I think that we would essentially form a task force, which this town has done many times before, to explore it, make sure that there's the requisite and right stakeholders of a big variety, that represent a big variety throughout the town. In the meantime, I think what's at the heart of this is town meeting and its current iteration, accessible for everyone, right? And I think where we're at right now, we've made some really, really great strides. The additional childcare has been tremendous. I think our current moderator is very good at keeping us all on topic and things moving along. So those are all considerations that we have to have if we're going to ask, working class families to show up and participate in democracy at town meeting. So,
thank you, Ms. Donovan.
Thank you. We have around 17,000 registered voters in town, and just over 500 of them came to our town meeting, which was actually a lot for a town meeting. This is not a good representation of the town, and I do feel that we need to, I like the idea of a budget task force, but reassessing whether or not this is working for Westford anymore, and if we do need to make these big decisions via ballot with comments and questions allowed before the vote and submitted to the select board or whatever different boards are involved. But I do think that a ballot vote would be best for other residents in town. I know as a mom, it's hard when my kid's at school all week and then I have to spend another day away from her. So, I know that that's going around a lot in town, and these are big decisions that everybody really should be able to make.
Okay, so before we go to closings, I'd first of all like to thank you all for participating tonight and all the other candidates who participated earlier, and for stepping up in general to run. Even though it's not too rough and tumble around here, it's still a lot of effort, and facing your neighbors this way is not always easy. So thank you for participating, and thanks to everyone for coming tonight. So 1 minute closing, and we will start with you, Ms. O'Connell.
So many people involved in town government agree that we're headed towards another override attempt. We have the opportunity now to start looking at how to implement level service cost savings, rebalance our tax revenue streams by revitalizing our commercial base, and at the same time work towards creating lower cost home ownership options. All of this may seem impossible, but it's not. Difficult, of course, but not impossible. Whether you supported or opposed last year's Proposition 2.5 override, I'm asking for your vote on May 6th. We can work together starting May 7th to avoid the next contentious override fight, which will certainly divide the town even further. Overrides always result in a losing side. I am running because I know from my experience that we can find those compromises that fund our schools and public safety without taxing any residents out of Westford. Keep Westford affordable, avoid the next override, revitalize our commercial base, bring diversity of thought to our boards, and provide our schools the funds they need. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to serving you on the select board.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Great, thank you for the league tonight. Folks, I'm a litigator by trade. I've spent my whole career fighting for the little guy against horrible insurance companies, and I'm ready to fight for Westford. There's a lot of issues that our town is faced with. I think that smart, responsible development of multifamily housing can alleviate some of the concerns that we've talked about tonight. A public-private partnership like this would create housing opportunities for our downsizing seniors and our young families, generate tax revenues to support our schools and our services, and attract businesses along 110. So given these issues that we're faced with, I don't think that we can afford negativity or inaction. We need someone who has a vision, dedication, and experience to get things done for our town. We need someone who's going to be positive about everything that Westford does great, someone who's collaborative and willing to seek compromise to make real progress. I believe I am that person.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzpatrick?
Thank you to the league again, and thank you to the moderator, especially those kind words at the end. And thank you to everyone at home that's watching. I know there's quite a few out there. I appreciate the time that everyone paying attention has dedicated to learning more about what the candidates offer for Select Board. I bring over a decade of town knowledge. I used to sit in the back of Abbott with my kids so that I could attend town meeting. And then I became much more knowledgeable when I delved into my role on the Finance Committee. With the changes in town, with positions, we have new leadership, we have folks that have been long-term employees that are leaving. I am able to bridge that knowledge gap and continue it. I will use my experiences to make the best decisions in the town. Budget season is 6 months away. We should be working right now to find as much savings as possible so that we can avoid a really divisive budget season later on. I'm proven and dedicated, and I hope to earn your vote on May 6th. Or the week before for early voting.
Thank you. Ms. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you again to the League for hosting this event. The Select Board is committed to ensuring the safety and well-being of our citizens, providing a high-quality education for our children, managing growth, maintaining the town infrastructure, and protecting the town's valued environmental and historic resources, all in a fiscally responsible manner. As a Select Board member, I will provide transparent leadership, look at all issues with curiosity and compassion, prioritize resident participation, and support and encourage our town employees and volunteers. I am asking for your vote on May 6th or the week before so that together we can preserve the Westford that we all cherish. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will keep my remarks to 1 minute or less, okay? First off, we've covered a variety of topics throughout the evening, but recognize, again, as I said in the beginning, we couldn't get to all the questions that were submitted previously, that probably were submitted tonight. So I encourage anyone, check out the voter's guide. If you have additional questions of anything that wasn't covered tonight that you'd like more information on from any of the candidates, please feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure they would respond, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. We would like to thank Joanne Berry for moderating tonight. We would also like to thank all the candidates who participated tonight, because it's a very important step to get the voters educated so that they can make smart choices. And finally, we would like to thank the WestfordCAT for recording and broadcasting to us our event, and also to all the league members who worked so diligently to make this evening happen. Please remember to vote by mail, early voting, on or before May 6th. Thank you and have a good night.